It was supposed to be a quiet night in southwest Houston. But in a small hotel room on Hayes Road, a single argument escalated into a fatal shooting that would shock a city. Jaylon Ward, a 25-year-old entrepreneur known for his gentle heart and love of animals, lay dead from a gunshot wound. The suspect, Gabriel Menefee, 23, was a documented gang member with a long criminal record, free on bond despite a history of violence. In the days that followed, investigators pieced together a story of repeated missed opportunities, arrests, probation violations, and systemic leniency that ultimately ended in tragedy. This case has ignited debates over bail, probation, and the revolving doors of justice, leaving Houstonians asking, could this death have been prevented? It was a quiet November night in southwest Houston, the kind of night where the city hums softly, unaware of what is about to unfold. Inside a second-floor hotel room on Hayes Road, a heated argument erupted, words sharp, tense, and escalating. Then came the sound that would shatter lives, a single gunshot. By 12:07 a.m., 25-year-old Jaylon Ward was dead. One shot to the chest had ended the life of a young man whose days had been filled with care, compassion, and dreams far bigger than the streets around him. Jaylon was not just another victim. He was a gentle soul who had spent his life lifting others. He ran a dog grooming and training business, helping veterans train service animals. Friends called him the man who would drop everything to help a stranger. He coached youth basketball at the YMCA, volunteered at local shelters, and carried the quiet hope of building a future beyond hardship. A family trip to Disney World was within reach. And yet it would never come. Across the room stood 23-year-old Gabriel Isaiah Menefee, whose life had been defined by a pattern of violence and missed chances. By his early 20s, Menefee had amassed 8 arrests, from juvenile weapons violations to aggravated robbery, assault with a deadly weapon, and a 2024 assault on a family member. At the time of this fatal night, he was free on bond, despite repeated probation violations and a record marked by escalating aggression. Every brush with the law had been a warning. Every lenient decision, a missed opportunity. The room itself bore witness to the chaos. Furniture overturned, a lamp shattered, and Ward's phone lying broken on the floor. Witnesses in nearby rooms recalled shouting, the scuffle, then the abrupt, terrifying report of a gunshot echoing through the hall. Jaylon stumbled into the corridor, blood soaking his clothes, collapsing near the elevators as guests called 911 in frantic whispers. Paramedics arrived, but by 12:07 a.m., his life had ended. Houston police officers quickly secured the scene. 4 9mm shell casings, a bloodied hotel keycard bearing Ward's fingerprints, and the signs of a brief struggle painted a stark, chilling picture. Investigators noted a personal dispute, perhaps over money or a previous slight, but Menefee's gang affiliations added a shadow of deeper danger. News of the shooting spread rapidly. Social media lit up with tributes, #Justice for Jaylon trending as photos of him smiling with rescued dogs reminded everyone what had been lost. The story ignited questions about Houston's justice system. How could a man with Menefee's record remain free? How could a life filled with promise end so abruptly, so preventably? The answers were not immediate. The questions lingered, heavy and unyielding, as the city held its breath. What happened that night would not stay confined to a hotel room. It would ripple across families, communities, and a legal system forced to confront its failures. Before we move deeper into the investigation, the arrest, and the trial that followed, take a moment to reflect. If you care about uncovering the truth, honoring lives like Jaylon's, and understanding the ripple effects of choices and justice, join us. Subscribe, share, and help grow this channel. Thank you for listening, for caring, and for standing with us as we seek clarity, accountability, and justice. The night after Jaylon Ward's life was taken, Houston seemed to pause. In the small hotel room on Hayes Road, the echoes of a single gunshot had vanished, but the questions remained, louder, heavier, impossible to ignore. Who was responsible? How had this tragedy unfolded so suddenly? And most pressing of all, could the person responsible be caught before they disappeared into the city's shadows? The Houston Police Department's Homicide Division moved swiftly. Crime scene investigators combed the room, meticulously cataloging evidence. 4 9mm shell casings, the bloodied hotel keycard marked with Ward's fingerprints, and the signs of a struggle frozen in place. Overturned furniture, a shattered lamp, a smashed phone. Every detail was a thread, waiting to be woven into a story of what had transpired in those final moments. Officers turned their attention to the suspect, Gabriel Isaiah Menefee. Known to the police, a member of the Play No Games gang, Menefee had a history marked by violence and repeated brushes with the law. Each arrest, each probation violation, told a story of a young man teetering on the edge, a life defined by impulse and circumstance. But this time he had crossed a line that could not be undone. Investigators pieced together Menefee's movements in the hours after the shooting. Security footage captured him fleeing down a stairwell, black hoodie pulled tight, backpack in hand, vanishing into the night. Witness statements and digital footprints, including Jaylon Ward's smashed phone, offered crucial leads. The trail, though faint, was precise. Tips poured in to Crime Stoppers, many anonymous, pointing to a relative's apartment on Scott Street. By November 6, 2 days after the shooting, SWAT teams executed a no-knock warrant at 4:15 a.m., the quiet of pre-dawn shattered by their arrival. Officers found Menefee hiding in a closet, the murder weapon, a high .9 mm, and Ward's stolen wallet within reach. He surrendered without resistance, muttering, "It was self-defense, he came at me." Ballistics confirmed the gun matched the casings recovered from the hotel room. DNA on the bloodied keycard linked Menefee directly to the scene. Methamphetamine was found in his system, while Ward's toxicology report showed no drugs or alcohol. The evidence formed a damning, irrefutable chain. Menefee had been present, armed, and responsible. In the quiet aftermath, the city grappled with disbelief. How could someone with Menefee's history, a pattern of gun-related offenses stretching back years, remain free long enough to commit another violent act? How many warning signs had gone ignored? And yet, amidst the procedural details, one truth resonated. A life had been lost, preventable, sudden, and irreversible. As Houston waited for justice, questions hung in the air like smoke over the city streets. How do repeated chances for one man translate into a final, devastating loss for another? Could a system meant to rehabilitate sometimes fail those it intends to protect most? Take a moment to consider this. If the warnings had been heeded, if every arrest had carried weight, could Jaylon Ward still be alive today? By November 10, 2025, Gabriel Isaiah Menefee's fate began to take shape in the cold fluorescent halls of the Harris County District Attorney's Office. The grand jury handed down a first-degree murder indictment, charging him with the killing of 25-year-old Jaylon Ward. Enhancements for using a deadly weapon and gang affiliation accompanied the indictment, a stark reflection of the violence that had erupted in that small hotel room just days before. Arraignment followed on November 12. Menefee entered the courtroom, flanked by public defenders and the weight of his criminal history pressing down like a shadow. He pleaded not guilty, claiming self-defense during what he described as a drug deal gone bad. Prosecutors, led by DA Kim Og, pushed back firmly, arguing that Menefee's history, his pattern of probation violations, and his flight risk made him too dangerous to be released. Each word, each motion in that courtroom carried the tension of a city watching, waiting, and questioning the system that had allowed this tragedy to occur. Public reaction was immediate and intense. Houston residents took to social media to express grief, outrage, and disbelief. The hashtag Justice for Jaylon trended locally, with photographs of Ward smiling with rescued dogs and messages of love and remembrance filling digital spaces. Vigils were held near the hotel on Hayes Road, balloons shaped like dog paws drifting into the night sky, symbols of a young man whose life had been devoted to caring for others. Yet the conversation extended beyond grief. Critics of Harris County's bail and probation practices saw Jaylon Ward's death as proof of systemic failure. GOP lawmakers, victim advocates, and concerned citizens pointed to Menefee's repeated offenses and probation violations, questioning how such a pattern of violent behavior could be met with so little consequence. Calls for reform, audits of judges, and stricter bail laws dominated headlines and social media feeds alike. The city seemed caught in a paradox, mourning a promising young life while confronting the structures that allowed danger to roam freely. The legal process, with its motions, hearings, and pretrial deliberations, unfolded against a backdrop of public scrutiny, each development watched closely by a community demanding answers. And amid all the legal motions and political debates, one truth remained: Jaylon Ward was gone, and the system's failures were now impossible to ignore. If you've been following this story, reflecting on the sequence of events, and feeling the weight of a life lost too soon, we invite you to join us. Subscribe, share, and help grow this channel. Your attention, care, and commitment allow us to honor victims like Jaylon Ward, ensuring their stories are told with the respect, clarity, and intensity they deserve. Thank you for listening, for believing in justice, and for standing with us. Now pause for a moment and consider this. If systems designed to protect fail repeatedly, who ultimately pays the price, and how do we prevent it from happening again? After the shooting on Hayes Road, Houston Police Department's Homicide Division immersed themselves in the painstaking work of reconstructing the night that had ended Jaylon Ward's life. The hotel room, once ordinary and transient, was now a frozen crime scene, each overturned chair and shattered lamp a silent witness to chaos and fear. Investigators moved carefully, collecting evidence that would form the backbone of a case destined to spark public outrage. 4 9mm shell casings were recovered from the room, each meticulously bagged and labeled. The bloodied hotel keycard, bearing Ward's fingerprints, was secured as a critical link between the victim, the scene, and the suspect. Officers documented every detail: the shattered phone on the floor, the trajectory of blood stains, and the faint scuff marks where a struggle had occurred. Each fragment told a story of panic, of a life violently interrupted in mere seconds. CCTV footage from the hotel was analyzed frame by frame. Menefee, clad in a black hoodie, was captured fleeing down the stairwell, backpack slung over his shoulder. The footage revealed more than his movements. It hinted at the urgency, the fear, and the decision-making that followed the fatal shot. Witness statements added nuance, recounting the shouted argument and the moment a gunshot pierced the quiet night. Police pieced together a timeline with painstaking precision: argument, escalation, discharge of the weapon, flight from the scene. The investigative team traced digital evidence as well. Ward's phone, smashed on the floor, yielded fragments of calls, messages, and locations, all pointing to the suspect. Tips from Crime Stoppers, submitted anonymously, honed in on Menefee's location at a relative's apartment on Scott Street. Law enforcement coordinated with SWAT, planning a no-knock entry designed to prevent further risk. At 4:15 a.m., they found Menefee hiding in a closet, the murder weapon within reach, and Ward's stolen wallet nearby. DNA and ballistics confirmed the connection beyond question. Yet amid the scientific certainty, the human element remained stark. Officers reflected on the stark contrast of this case: a victim with a life dedicated to care and community, and a young man whose life had been marked by repeated choices leading to violence. The procedural work, the evidence collection, ballistics testing, and DNA analysis, was methodical, precise, and unemotional. But for the families and for the city watching, each detail was a reminder of the life lost, the opportunities missed, and the fragility of safety in an environment shaped by systemic shortcomings. By the time the investigation solidified its conclusions, Houston had already begun to reckon with the broader implications. Menefee's criminal history, bond reductions, and probation violations became focal points in a conversation about accountability. Public awareness and media coverage magnified the weight of each finding, creating a tension between procedural justice and the community's demand for moral reckoning. As the evidence mounted, the city faced an unsettling truth: the meticulous work of law enforcement could reconstruct the night of November 4th, but it could never restore Jaylon Ward's life. Each shell casing, every CCTV frame, and every DNA match served as both proof and reminder, proof of guilt and reminder of loss. And now we must ask ourselves: when a system fails repeatedly, when patterns of violence are ignored, how many lives remain at risk before lessons are truly learned? In the weeks following November 4, 2025, Houston streets carried the echoes of a life lost too soon. Jaylon Ward, a young man whose days had been filled with care for others, whose hands had trained service dogs and guided children on basketball courts, was gone. His absence left a quiet void in homes, in neighborhoods, and in the hearts of everyone who had known his gentle spirit. Gabriel Isaiah Menefee remained in Harris County Jail without bond, facing first-degree murder charges with enhancements for using a deadly weapon and gang affiliation. Court proceedings moved forward, each hearing scrutinized by the public and the press. Motions were filed, evidence contested, and pretrial arguments dissected in a legal system now under the watchful gaze of a city still reeling. Menefee maintained his claim of self-defense, but the evidence, CCTV footage, DNA, ballistics, and eyewitness accounts, painted a starkly different picture. Across the city, public discourse surged. Houston residents, victim advocates, and lawmakers debated the failures of the justice system that had allowed Menefee to remain free despite a pattern of violence and probation violations. GOP lawmakers, including State Senator Joan Huffman, cited the tragedy as proof that reforms to bail and probation must carry consequences. On social media, #JusticeForJaylon continued to trend, a digital monument to a life interrupted. Community vigils, candlelight gatherings, and balloon releases shaped in dog paw prints honored Ward's devotion to animals and the lives he had touched. Amid the grief, Jaylon's family sought to transform tragedy into legacy. The Jaylon Ward Foundation was launched, aiming to mentor youth and guide them towards safer paths, turning sorrow into a mission that might prevent another life from ending too soon. A GoFundMe campaign raised over $65,000 for funeral costs and scholarships in his name, demonstrating the enduring love and impact of a life devoted to helping others. Yet, even with justice pursued and tributes made, questions lingered. Could systemic failures ever be fully addressed? How many warnings must be ignored before tragedy strikes again? Jaylon's death was more than an isolated incident. It was a reflection of gaps in accountability, a stark reminder that the choices of one person, and one system, can shape the fate of another. As we close this chapter of the story, we honor Jaylon Ward, a son, a brother, a mentor, a friend, a man whose light illuminated the lives of many. His life, though cut tragically short, continues to inspire action, reflection, and hope. If you've followed this story, taken in its lessons, and felt the weight of Jaylon's life, we invite you to help us continue telling these stories. Subscribe, share, and support this channel so that every life, every story, and every search for justice can reach the audience it deserves. Thank you for listening, for caring, and for standing with us in remembrance and reflection. And finally, ask yourself, when a life is lost to preventable violence, what responsibility do we each bear, to notice, to act, and to ensure the next tragedy can be prevented?